Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Door to Door. I'm Virginia Stanley and Chris Connolly are here. Lainey Mays is off doing another presentation. So we're all over the place. We are very, very, very thrilled and honored to have two speakers with us today. The first is Ann Basting, author of Creative Care, which is going on sale on May 19th. This book has had such a profound effect on me personally and on colleagues who have read it and applied these techniques in their own personal lives. This is about connecting with those who are having memory issues, be it Alzheimer's, dementia, a new way to help connect when you thought perhaps that was not possible any longer. So I am going to turn this over to Anne so she can talk more fully about this incredible book. And then I want to read some just glowing reviews about this book, and for good reason. This is an important book. And so, Anne, thank you so much for coming on today.
It's my treat and privilege. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you for that introduction. It's a real delight for me to share this book, particularly at this time. We always are looking for ways to connect, particularly to people who we fear are lost to us. But it's never been more pronounced than now as a time for you can feel a yearning to connect. And figuring out how to do it. Now we're trying to figure it out virtually, but also for, family members at home, trying to figure out how to meaningfully connect. If I have a hope for this book, it's that people feel that hope, that if memory loss or disability, distance, keeps you from feeling as though you have meaningful connection with an older adult in your life, that these techniques, shifting away from sort of that place of fact and the expectation of memory, shifting away from that, opening yourself to this freedom, this feeling of that the imagination can connect you in a sense of shared play and discovery. It just, when that happens and you can feel it, it's just extraordinary. It's as though you've discovered each other again after literally feeling lost for so long. I started this work maybe, and a lot of this book is the story. The first part of the book is the story of me, how I came to this work in the first place. It's really 20, 30 years ago, just from my own background in the arts and then my own relationships with older people. And this kind of realization that when you let go all of that pressure to put things in words as they should be and in order and chronological order, and you just start to play with sound and movement and gesture and the more poetic quality of expression, that you find joy with each other. And oftentimes, after I first had that exposure to it, volunteering in a nursing home, we were talking before, just out of, trying so hard to get people to share their memories and realizing that was just not working on this locked Alzheimer's unit. And instead just tearing a picture of the Marlboro Man out of a magazine and bringing it in and saying, all right, let's just make up a story about this guy. What do you want to call him? And for them to take ownership of this story. And he was Fred. He was Fred Astaire. He lived in Oklahoma. And then they started singing Oklahoma. And to have it go from nothing and a lot of fear and a lot of just wounded souls to singing and laughing and storytelling for 45 minutes in a place you never ever expected that to happen was so profound that it fueled the next 30 years of my life. So that a little bit of that hope is, there's a lot of it in these pages, and it feels pretty good right about now, I have to say.
Yeah, well, as I was saying before, that I read this manuscript so long ago, and I was so struck by it. And that moment, that one piece of the photograph of the Marlboro Man just stuck with me. That that a pack of cigarettes, and then you take this image and you rip it off of that, and then you start showing it to them, and then they tap into this wellspring, and now they've created this thing, creative care. It's so perfect, and it's just, I don't know, I have found this book so profoundly moving, and as I say, putting those practices in play and finding that what you're saying, it just, and as I say, other colleagues and friends of mine have had the same results, that, asking somebody who has limited recall when it's just not there anymore and saying, don't you remember, blah, blah, it's awful. They freeze, it's like, that's not the way. And what we were talking about before is that this is such a wonderful book and a wonderful experience for for people who are caring for those who have these memory issues, because you are suddenly you're connected in a way that you didn't think you could be before. And it's wonderful. It's just, it's really quite unbelievable. So I would love for you to talk a little bit more about the actual practices and some of the things that you put into play, and that would be cool for people to hear.
Sure. I mean, that was also my dream of this book. I've been doing this for a long time, and I think finally putting things down, the opening section is how I got to this work. The middle section is really taking it apart step by step and making it as clear as possible. And at the end of each chapter, there's little hints for how to do this at home. Like, are you going to try to do this in your own life? And that whole section, which goes over improvisation, the concept of yes and then asking what we call beautiful questions, which open up this shared path of discovery, rather than a lot of people trained to work with people with dementia will ask closed questions to limit options. That's great if you're trying to be instrumental in what you're doing, but if you're trying to create relationship and bring the person out into expression, asking these open-ended, beautiful, poetic questions really connects you on a different level and enables the person to express differently. And then proof of listening, echoing everything the person says as though they're kind of teaching you a new language and you're entering into their expression. Opening yourself to wonder, and then learning to experience awe, which is really, once you assemble all of those approaches together, I talk about you can experience awe in your life through nature, creativity, and spirituality. And I talk about the fourth portal, which is really a deep, meaningful connection with another human being. So that's the middle section. And then I talk about going from those groups or those one-on-one relationships. What happens if you actually infuse this approach into our care systems, which could really use a dose of creativity, and how it changes if you put a meaningful project. Think about that right now in nursing homes. If you put a meaningful project inside of a care home that everyone could participate on and feel as though they were shaping a piece of legacy, that their contribution mattered, you would be putting meaning making back into places that have been emptied of it. Home care, it helps foster relationships there as well. So how that final section, really wrestling with how this isn't just an interpersonal technique, although I'm so happy to hear it's helpful for people. It's also it has transformative potential for the way we even understand care overall. An example of a chapter there is a project that we recently finished in Kentucky with 12 rural nursing homes, where over the course of 2 years, we took apart the story of Peter Pan and did hundreds of creative workshops with poetry and movement and visual arts and all kinds of different things. And then put it all back together into a performance that the entire nursing home, the care staff, the residents, artists that we brought in, like hundreds of volunteers, really answered that question. What if programming in care settings was so interesting that everybody wanted to do it?
Yeah.
And that's actually where I see it has some implications for libraries as well, which is they're doing programming. And these kinds of approaches can be really informative for offering creative, generative, cross-generational work for like story sessions with people with memory loss, older adults who might be isolated, people seeking connection with their community.
Yeah, that's very interesting that you say that. And I think that, who knows how long, whether virtually or back when everybody, opens their doors again. I mean, it is something to definitely think about because, I had an aunt who lived in assisted living, and I went and looked at all the programming that they had, and I said, "Well, what about this? No. What about bingo? No." All of that. Like, what do I care about? Like, bingo's fine. I love bingo. That's not the point. The point is how can they turn this on its head? And you're offering that, and I think it's just so important, and really says everything with how it's been embraced across the country.
Yeah. Well, I think too, sometimes when I give talks, I'll say, have people picked out the year that they would like to stop learning and growing? It's good to get a sense of that so that we can stop offering programming. Like if you become disabled at the end of your life, let's just plan on that being when you stop learning and growing. It's sarcastic, but it makes people realize that that's what we've done, that a lot of the programming is passive, entertainment oriented. And at the root of this whole approach is getting us to stop focusing on what we've perceived care to be about loss. And when you bring creativity next to care, creativity is generative. And so care becomes generative. Like that, creative care transforms the way we even understand care to not be about loss, but about co-creation. And that's a game changer, that if we can believe that all the way to the end, even if you have dementia, physical disabilities, whatever you're wrestling with, you can express and grow and learn about yourself and help shape the world that you want to leave behind. And suddenly late life becomes meaningful again. And that's a balm for everyone.
Right. Well, I just don't want to leave anything out here before I ask you to sort of dip in a little bit and read a little bit. There are stats which are staggering on the number of U.S. residents that are projected to, have dementia or Alzheimer's in the years to come. I mean, what I would really rather focus, I think we all sort of have heard those stats, and while they are staggering, I think that your book is offering something very different and very important, just having a great effect on people, your organization. I just wanted to read a couple of quotes before I ask you to dip in for a second. Cynthia Orange, author of Take Good Care and Shockwave, says, creative care is a love letter to aging, not a prescription filled with should. It's a beautifully rendered invitation to be curious and flexible. I didn't want that to sound like inflexible. Not a prescription filled with should. It's a beautifully rendered invitation to be curious and flexible, meeting elders wherever they happen to be in the moment and making that moment richer, sweeter, and more meaningful for all. I love that quote because it also, as I said before, it's sort of encompassing the caretaker, the caregiver, the care person. And it's really wonderful. The raves go on and on. I just think this is such an important book. As I say, we've been talking about this book since forever, really. I would be remiss in my introduction. I did not say that you are a MacArthur Genius Grant recipient, and now that is explains a lot. Could you read some? Could you give all a taste?
Happy to. I just picked the very beginning. And I mentioned a little bit about the Kentucky Project, and it starts right at the first performance of that play at a rural Kentucky nursing home. So chapter 1, in which Ruth teaches me what joy looks like. It was opening day. Spirits were incredibly high. I had walked into Morgantown Care and Rehabilitation in Morgantown, Kentucky that Saturday morning to a chorus of exuberant greetings, not what you'd usually expect at a nursing home. Now it was just about 2 p.m., showtime. After 2 weeks of rehearsal and a year of planning, the elders, local actors, volunteers, and staff were about to perform their version of Peter Pan, one in which Wendy is in hospice care in her final phase of growing up. And the audience, rather than clapping to prove their belief in fairies, would meet the extended hand of an elder to prove that they believed in one another. There would be song and dance. There would be a giant crocodile, pirates, and of course, flying. These residents, several of whom had not been out of their rooms for months, were about to welcome an audience to see them and their nursing home in a completely new light. They were inviting the audience to see beauty and meaning in a place where most people only see overwhelming loss. Ruth had been at every rehearsal. If I had to guess, I would say Ruth was in her late 80s with a bob of gray hair framing her face. Riding a wheelchair, she was one of the dozen elders dancing in the finale to Frank Sinatra's Fly Me to the Moon. As Shirley, a resident who had been the activity director in this very nursing home for 40 years, offered a blessing on the performance, and the stage manager called out, "Places!" Ruth's care partner wheeled her out onto the home's front patio for the pre-show. The wind carried a chill, but every elder in the dance chorus insisted on going outside to greet the audience and listen to the live music. I looked around at the faces. Every one of them was wide-eyed and wonder-filled, except Ruth. She was crying. Her eyes were bright, but tears rolled down her cheeks. Her mouth was twisted into a half smile, half grimace. I went to her straight away, kneeling down in front of her, taking her hands. "Ruth," I whispered, "are you okay?" She nodded eagerly. "Are they happy tears?" I asked. "Oh, yes," she said with a laugh. "Happy, happy tears." That's just a little snippet.
I love that part.
I think it's really important that we're not whitewashing the challenges. People were fighting through cognitive disabilities and stroke and amputation and like intense things in this nursing home. But they also could experience enormous levels of joy. And I think sometimes we get stopped by the loss, embarrassed or uncertain how to engage. And if we can coax ourselves through it, we can, again, bring out meaning and joy that ends up boosting the spirits of everybody.
Right. We have a question from our librarian friend, Lillian Dabney, who wants to know, how do you deal with anger issues in dementia?
You know, I anger is not a necessarily a symptom. I really advocate that people check um, what I call the toxicity of the environment to see all forms of behavior and expression are communication. So the anger is communicating something to you. And to learn to understand communication for its emotional, like what's emotional underneath it. So if someone comes at you with an expression of anger, trying to get underneath it and unpack what's inside of it, is someone uncomfortable? Is something hurting them? Are they in pain? People with dementia are often undertreated for pain, even just with Tylenol, because bones hurt and they can't express pain in a traditional way. So sometimes expressions of anger are actually expressions of pain, either emotional or physical. Um,
Mhm.
and then redirecting as best as possible into a generative stance, um,
Mhm.
asking someone for help. Can they help you do something or complete something? I think too often we remove the sense of purpose from people in the latter, if they're in need and receiving a lot of need, a lot of care. And sometimes reopening that channel to purpose and generosity helps redirect as well. And then sometimes it's just I get angry too, you know,
Right.
um, and I think it's a it's a person's right to be angry, and sometimes it passes. So sometimes it's just there.
Hmm.
Hope
Yeah.
that was helpful.
No, I like that. I also think about in what you're saying about, it's very important for everybody to feel like they have a purpose. And I think that, when you if you can, tap into somebody's, their opinion, their opinion about something, or or maybe they were a fabulous cook back in the day, but when have they ever, put a pot on a stove, in the last however many years? But that all of that is there. And so I just think that everything that you're doing to trigger that, they're not just bodies, they're in there.
Yeah,
And you have managed to find a way. I mean, you've been doing this since you were, for a long time. And I love your history and how you talk about when you first started at the nursing homes. I mean, I could relate to that in a small way, having done it in high school myself, and it's really when you're a kid and you see, oh man, but it can be a wonderful thing to be able to connect to people who may not have anybody knocking on
yeah,
that door.
yeah. You can feel it. The very first time it happened with the Marlboro Man, it felt like a miracle, and
Hmm.
that this expression was coming out, and it wasn't a pill. It wasn't. It
Yeah.
was just a. It was just an invitation, and listening,
Yeah.
and weaving it into a story, weaving it into something that has value, that
Right.
is an avenue of expression that can bridge people to the world. And that's all it is, but it's so hard to sometimes it's the hardest thing to do. um, the book is full of examples of stories
Yeah.
of how to do it and where it's been effective, so I think that'll be really helpful.
And the links that you have provided, which Chris, I think you were able to get them onto the post. So, do you want to just speak about those first a minute before we?
Sure. Yeah. The first is Time Slips is the nonprofit that I work with, that I founded long, long time ago. And we've been, particularly in this moment, creating tools for care partners and family members and then even people just stuck at home to exercise creativity and to invite others into creative expression. So that that link is to the resource page, where you'll see tons and tons of stuff, particularly things we've been offering for this moment of isolation and quarantine. The second link is the author page of my website that's just all on the book, with all the links of pre-order and the reader's guide and things that'll be helpful. Then the third one, I believe, is my own coping mechanism for this moment. On my public Facebook page, I've been posting a tiny little 2-minute video every day for, this is the 20th day, which I can't believe, which I call a little daily dose of creative care. And they just walk you through a very simple creative exercise, like minute. It fits on an index card. You can see all my index cards up here behind me, all 20, taped up to the door. I hope the door doesn't fill, but I'm ready. I'm ready if the whole door fills. Just little ways of thinking, little, glimmers, shimmers of imagination that I think are really fun to see. So I just connected to that. It was an accident that I started doing it, but now it has kind of a momentum behind it. So I'm happy to share it.
Well, accidents happen for a reason, I think, sometimes. Well, Dr. Ann Basting, thank you so much for writing this book, Creative Care, and for all the work that you've done over the years, your organization. If people get a chance, and you should, go to check on the links there, because there's a wealth of information, not only in the book, but on the time slips. And I can't thank you enough for all that you've done, and for taking the time to talk to librarians. And we will soldier on. And but with these tools, I think of this book as a toolbox, like a toolkit. And you open it up, and there are ways that you can go in there and you can turn that screw a little bit, and you will be amazed. So everyone out there needs to do this. You owe it to yourselves as well as the people in your lives who have some memory issues. Really, it's really important. So Creative Care by Dr. Ann Basting. And it goes on sale May 19th. So, and you can click on the links here and order it now, and whatever you would need to do for you. So thank you, Dr. Basting, very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Take good care.
Yep.
All right. And now she's amazing.
So amazing. My gosh.
Just so good. So amazing. Smart. Now, where is the fabulous Elizabeth Marshall Thomas? Is she there?
Bring her on. Let's bring her on.
Bring her on.
Joining now.
Where is fabulous Elizabeth?
Up. Hey Liz, you watching us? I think I heard the replay.
Yeah. Hi Liz. How are you?
Okay, thanks.
Good. Well, can everybody hear everybody? Everybody's good? Yeah, Liz?
I'm sorry.
Okay, good. We have good volume. Excellent. All right. So now, listen, we've had a wealth of fabulousness today. So we had Dr. Basting, and now we have Elizabeth Marshall Thomas, author of so many books, including The Hidden Life of Dogs, and your new book, Growing Old, which we are so proud to be publishing. It goes on sale April 28th. So one more week, and it's the book's birthday. Liz, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. It's greatly appreciated. Your book is absolutely wonderful, and notes on growing old. I love your for those of you on Edelweiss who have access to Edelweiss, you can read a terrific behind the book piece. This is a letter from Elizabeth Thomas to booksellers and librarians, and I just absolutely love this letter that you've written, Liz, saying that you're sort of an authority on writing about growing old, So I am going to turn it over to you and ask you to tell everyone what your book is about.
Well, it's it's about growing old, as it says. And, you know, lots and lots of books are written about growing old. And the thing is that most of them are written by people who are quite a bit younger than the people they're writing about. But I am not. I am fully qualified because I'm 88 and I know what it's like to grow old from personal experience. So I kind of had fun writing it. It's an interesting procedure to in ways that one may not think ahead of time. For instance, the things you forget. There seems to be a sort of order in which you forget them, which is kind of interesting. I found it to be first names, but we all forget names, and we don't
Right.
have to be very old to do that. And I think that's because names are, well, there are lots of things that we kind of feel like by instinct. Fear of certain things is somewhat by instinct, and it comes about because of experiences of our species in the distant past. And the forgetting things is that way too. We probably didn't have, when we were evolving as humans, we probably didn't have names for ourselves. In the same, perhaps we had sounds that referred to different individuals, but probably not names. That probably came later when we became homo this or homo that. And so maybe we don't have it as deeply as we have other things. Anyway, it is interesting that most people forget names first, and they're not very old when they start doing it. But then for me, it was the names of things. And after that, but not verbs, never verbs. After that, long after that, I forgot a verb. And then I realized that everything had changed.
Once you forgot the verb, that was the turning point.
That was, well, I realized that I was going to forget verbs too. And it's kind of interesting. Well, I mean, it was just interesting not to not forget them, but to forget nouns was an interesting thing. I just didn't know why we were doing that. But anyway, well, the book is about other things too. It's not just about forgetting things, because I forgot to write anymore about forgetting things. It has about our somewhat of our feelings about death, either that we feel it ourselves, we fear the death of others. I don't think most people are very, very scared of death. I think most people are, they don't want it to happen, but it isn't something that they fear. I think that it may come under some circumstances, but I think that, most people, everybody is going to die, no matter what. Everybody in the world is going to die, and every living thing in the world is going to die. So, that means I will too. So it doesn't seem so scary. Let's say, I don't know. But I'm not immediately threatened with it. So we'll see what happens if I am immediately. But I've known many people who have died, and they've been with family members and friends who died. And they didn't seem frightened, and they seemed peaceful. So not everybody is, but it's possible to be. Anyway, the book deals with those kinds of questions a little bit, and which I think you don't very often see that, I don't think. So it's kind of interesting. It was interesting to write.
I was going to ask you well, you've written so many books, and I was curious what made you write this book. Like what gave you the idea that this is something that, because you talk about how, as you say, you are the authority on this because you are living it, and that maybe you're sort of maybe pulling back the blinds a little bit and enlightening people. I mean, let's be clear too that this book is not just about the downside of aging, but also there's a lot of humor in this book. I mean, I found myself cracking up in this book. I mean, this is just such a gift. It's a gift, this book.
That's nice. Well, it's what made me write it was because everything else I've written is something that I saw or experienced. Well, I mean, I've written novels, which are that's it. But the nonfiction is something I saw and watched or studied or something like that. And so I'm kind of in it, in that it's me that's doing the looking at whatever it is to look at. And so I just did that. I sort of did that for myself. I thought I can do that. I can do that. I can look at it. I look at the big something to and so but I thought it was kind of fun. I really enjoyed writing that book because you can it was fun.
Yeah. Well, I also think that you break some stereotypes. I feel like anybody who comes to this book, regardless of age, well, especially people who are a bit younger, I think that they're I think you get checked at the door. Do you know what I mean? Because I think that you are breaking stereotypes. And as we were speaking yesterday with Anne, when we were sort of doing our run through, and we we're talking about the book and the takeaways from it. And so, like, well, yes, people do break hips, and Anne said, and then, and okay, yes, and keep going. It's just sort of, it's very enlightening in a way.
Oh, thanks. I'm glad you think so.
Yeah, I just think it's it's been compared to Nora Ephron's book, I Feel Bad About My Neck. I just think that it's this, like, it's there. Let's talk about it. Let's have a little fun with it. It's some of it, not so much fun. Other parts, you say, there are things I don't really care about anymore. Like the things that you used to care about, you're not going to get hung up on that stuff. And I love that. It seems very freeing in a way, but I also feel that you're shining a light on that. I mean, we're all, as Anne said, we're all going to die. We're all growing old. We're lucky if we get to grow old. We are lucky, especially now, right? I mean,
well, yes, I naturally wrote it before this corona crisis came, and
yeah,
that would be worth. I mean, I'm sure plenty of people will write books about that because
yeah.
But so then we can read those. But it was written before that, of course, so it doesn't have to.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like it's okay that it was written when it was written, because nothing really does change. I mean, it's
No, true. No, it was written fine. It was. I have no problem with that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
It's the corona, and that crisis changed things a little bit. So it certainly temporarily changed things. So
yeah.
yeah.
Well, certainly the situation with nursing homes, I mean, that's just absolutely staggering.
Yes.
And I think that, well, I would love it if you would read a piece of the book. I know that right? Did you want to read a little bit from the book?
Sure. Are we from the beginning?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay.
I love your subtitle.
Oh, that's good. Why write a book about old age? Nobody wants it. Nobody likes it. When I told a friend what I was doing, she said sarcastically, that sounds like fun, because except for senior discounts, we see nothing good about it. When it comes, we try to hide it while our minds and bodies crumble, and death is our only escape. This view is needlessly negative. Death is the price we pay for life. Only plants, animals, fungi, and single-cell organisms have it, and all of us pay for it sooner or later. Like most of us, I see the price is extra high, something like getting a six-figure credit card bill. Would it be nice to avoid it? I live in rural New Hampshire, and when I looked around for a debt-free entity, I saw just grasses and trees. That didn't help. All of them will pay the price just like I will. Then I saw a stone in my field. 300 million years ago, about 10 miles below the Earth's surface, this stone was formed. Somehow it got squeezed up and out, and in 10,000 BC, a glacier brought it to the place where I saw it. By then it was 29 million years old. What's that like? You see what it's like if you imagine time as distance, and picture the time between now and 10,000 BC as 1 foot on a very long ruler. The rock was formed 5 miles away on that. In 1935, my father brought me to the same place. I was 4 years old, and since then I've seen some changes. The trees are taller, a pond appeared when my dad made a dam in a stream, and the town paved the dirt road that went by our house. All that was quite something, especially the road, because soon after it was paved, the town gave it a different name. This took emotional adjustment on our part. But consider the stone. Assuming it popped from the earth in a good place and had consciousness, it could have watched evolution transform a single-cell organism into a Tyrannosaurus rex, and later watched another dinosaur transform into a bird. With life and consciousness, the stone could have known what influenced these transformations. The climate changes, the great extinctions, and the great recoveries. Just in my area, it would have seen the glacier melting, the frozen earth recovering, plants starting to grow, and wildlife starting to flourish. Mammoths and cave lions passed by this stone. Pentecost and Abenaki people camped near it. European settlers arrived, built a house in a barn, and cut down hundreds of trees to make a field. The last is but a nanosecond in the stone's long existence. Even the scientists will never know what the stone could have done if it had life and consciousness. But as far as the stone is concerned, nothing happened. It doesn't even know when it rained. If you can imagine existing for 300 billion years without knowing that you did so, I think you might agree that life with a price seems better than eternal existence for free. Our kind, the living organisms, have existed as such for as long as the stone. But unlike the stone, we don't keep the same forms. We improve our species by reproducing ourselves, often without replicating ourselves exactly. And the little changes give natural selection unlimited opportunities to fix us. Thus, like the stone, we life forms are still on Earth after 3 billion years, but our journey was more exciting. Every one of our lives was a little window to the world with all its activity and attraction. To be alive is to experience, and throughout our lives we gain experience, beginning with birth, which if we're humans is when we slide from a tight, wet, warm environment into a vast, almost empty, chilly environment with air, light, scent, and sound all around us, and big, scary creatures looming over us. As for information, at this time in our lives, we're just a tad below where we start. The end of our journey appears as we age, having collected a mixture of facts, friends, relatives, mistakes, triumphs, tragedies, and possessions. Thus, old age is a pre-death transition, and how we perceive it can depend on how far life has brought us. When we're young, death and those approaching it seem to have little to do with us. Old people don't look or act like us. They might almost be a different species. As for death, we don't want it, of course, but why worry about it? It seldom happens to young people. We can freely do dangerous things. By middle age, we've learned a bit more. We may be only in our 50s, but we know about aging, and we're saying we're not as young as we used to be. We're paying more attention to what we eat and how we exercise. 25 years later, we realized we were spring chickens while having such thoughts, because by then we're approaching the old age transition. Gosh, this is different. Do we feel the transition? We can't run fast and we're careful climbing stairs, but we're still living, so we're lucky. But maybe we're starting to feel unlucky. Living like this, we call this lucky. We're prejudiced against old age. Hopefully this book will help with the prejudice. It mentions the rough parts of aging, but only to tell the whole story. So it is totally truthful, and it points out the good parts too. Of course, we must adjust as best we can, but knowing what's coming can help us prepare. Thanks.
Yay, that's fabulous. That's just so perfect. You know, it's just such, it just really encapsulates what you're trying to say here. And it's very honest and very, very authentic and invulnerable in a way. I love it. I just thank you so much for writing this book and for sharing your thoughts with us, your life with us, you know. I have pages of quotes, raves about your book, but I would like to read this one from Publishers Weekly, which gave it a starred review, and says octogenarian Thomas tackles old age in this clever and astute memoir. Thomas is an inspiring example of a life well lived, and her sense of humor, honesty, and curiosity will resonate. You know, there are pages and pages and so much good stuff. Library Journal, Kirkus, the author of Cy Montgomery, the author of The Soul of an Octopus, beautiful quotes. I mean, you really just so wonderful. It's all on Edelweiss if anybody wants to check it out. Also check out the letter from Elizabeth Thomas to booksellers and librarians. It's absolutely wonderful. And, you know, we just are so honored to have you here today. And we thank you so much for writing this book and for taking time to talk to librarians and to share your book with everyone.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Liz.
Well, I think we are going to wrap it up. It's a stormy day here in New York. Liz, I hope you're tucked in nice and cozy.
Over here too.
Yeah, it's pretty wicked.
You can almost hear the thunder or the
Lots of thunder. Chris is still in the Caribbean because works for Chris. I'm jealous. Okay, well, you take good care. We thank you again. And we will, anything, did you want to add something, Chris? Are you good?
No, just wishing everyone the best. Thanks for joining us today. And thank you, Liz. That was illuminating and beautiful. So thank you again for joining us.
Okay, you take good care. And thank you all for listening. And we'll be back on Thursday with our marketing director from HarperCollins talking about some hot books coming out in the summer and early fall. So we'll see you then, 2:00. And Liz, all the best. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.